Hey everybody, so I'm gonna get started here. This is the podcast. Hello and welcome to Stuff I Heard with Josh Peak. I'd like to thank everybody for checking in today. Today is Wednesday, July 25th. I'm looking it up on my calendar on my phone. I've got a couple things going on here. I have tried to do a video component of this podcast as I've been doing it. I do have grand scheme ideas about how this is going to work, and I would like to make it all come together. I don't know how to do it all. I mean, I'm sort of juggling this as I am doing it right now. You guys are listening to me, and I appreciate everybody. What is difficult is figuring out the best platform to get everything out. This started as I constantly had ideas in my head of things I wanted to get out, and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know the proper way to do it. I didn't know if YouTube was the way to do it or if the podcast was the way to do it. But I have a weird knack for talking to people. My grandfather, it was said that he never met a stranger because he would just randomly talk to anybody. And my brother has that ability too. My brother from a very early age would just meet people right off the bat and be like, "Hey, how are you? My name's Alex," and just right off the bat, you knew instantly, like, I like this guy and I want to talk to him. I want him to be my friend. I was not that way. I was very shy. A lot of it had to do with a stuttering problem that I had as a kid. But also, I was sort of measuring when it was my turn to speak, and also I knew that I didn't know a lot. So it's not like I felt like, oh, I've got some important stuff to say. People listen to me. So I was quiet a lot. I listened. I paid attention. And when I got older, I went through some stuff. They say that wisdom is just you going through life and learning from your mistakes. Well, I've made a lot of mistakes, as we all have, and I hope that I've learned from them. What I like to do is I like to pass along the knowledge that I've learned. This week I happened to have the chance to talk to several friends about starting their own podcasts. One of them has already done it. The other two are still sort of dragging their feet. If you guys are listening, get off your butts and get going. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. The one who did start it is actually sort of related through marriage. It would be my stepmother's grandson, so that would make me his second cousin, maybe second nephew. I don't know. I'm sort of a step uncle. I think when we went on a trip together a while back, they nicknamed me Stunkle, which stood for step uncle, which I thought was funny. Stunkle Josh. Always hilarious, always a good time. Thanks, guys. Anyway, Brandon started his own podcast, and I have not listened to it yet, and I will get to it. I am actually looking up his name here. Stick with me. I can't do two things at once. There it is. Brandon Hochul. He is going to college up in Union, Maine, or Unity, Maine, or something like that. Anyway, his podcast is available on Anchor. It's called Organic Phrases, and it looks like he's interested in farming and writing. If you look him up, his little icon that he's come up with is a neat looking design. It's purple and all this other stuff. Anyway, I'm supporting him. I want him to do good. I hope he's doing good. Hang on, I gotta pause this. I'm getting a phone call from my wife. This is the Organic Phrases, by the way. See the picture? Alright, I'm gonna hit record again. You ready? Alright, sorry for that. Phone call from the wife. She had a dentist appointment lined up, and they had canceled on her, and they told her that there was a death that they had to attend a funeral, and she was like, okay, I understand. Well, she called me back to let me know it was our dental hygienist who had passed away, and that was unfortunate. She was a very nice lady, but I was that's some sad news. So rest in peace, Tammy. You were a good dental hygienist and a nice lady. But anyway, not to be a downer. So how about a change of pace here? I talked before about an unofficial sponsor. They're not sponsoring me at all, but I enjoy it. It's this Mio stuff that you squirt in your water. I got one here, I'm showing to the camera. It's Mio Lemonade. And I squirted it in a water bottle. To me it tastes like Country Time lemonade. I like it. It's some good stuff. I'm having a little bit of keto flu. I've been doing the keto diet. I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about it before. I don't know where I got some carbs in, but I have started these things called fat bombs. I follow this couple, this Keto Connect couple, and they have stuff on YouTube and on Instagram, and I bought their cookbook, and I've shown you guys pictures of that and talked about them before. They mentioned in the book that whenever they feel like they need some extra fat in their diet, they eat a fat bomb. And I was like, what is a fat bomb? I don't know what that is. So I looked it up on YouTube, and the first one that come up was their picture. It said two ingredients. It is like a refined coconut oil mixed with some protein powder, and I got some whey isolate that is cookies and cream flavored. Basically, you take a half a cup of the coconut oil and you heat it up and melt it, and then you mix in 2 scoops of this cookies and cream whey isolate protein powder. It has, I think it has no carbs and no sugar. You're supposed to mix it up really good and get it so that all the consistency gets real fine. I didn't know how to do that exactly, because when you put it in there and you start mixing it up, it all looks uniform anyway, but it wasn't. I know that because I had a silicone mold thing that looked like little cubes, and you're supposed to like pour the stuff into it. Well, when I got to the bottom of the pot, I had some grainy stuff at the bottom. I'm imagining the grainy stuff was more of the protein isolate, and that's where your flavor comes in. The coconut oil really doesn't taste like anything, but it kind of tastes like wax when it cools off. Anyway, you fill up the tray, you put it in the fridge, and supposedly overnight, the next day, you eat it. She mentioned in the video that she puts in macadamia nuts to add a little bit of extra flavor and a little bit of extra fat to it, and some sea salt. Well, I don't have macadamia nuts here, and I don't have sea salt. What I did have was some walnuts, and I had some Himalayan salt. So I put a walnut in each one of them, and I sprinkled some Himalayan salt on each one of them, and I put them in the fridge. Now, the guy comes on to the second part of the video, and I don't remember his name, I'm sorry. And he says something about, you know, yeah, usually about 2 hours in, I can go ahead and eat them because they're already hardened up. So I had made dinner last night, my wife and I ate, and afterwards I was like, all right, so I'm going to try one of these. Do you want to try one? And she was like, sure. I popped the whole thing in my mouth, and she like bit off a corner, and she's like, it tastes like wax. And I'm like, you're supposed to eat more of it because the flavor's in the middle part. And she kind of hem-hawed around about eating it, and I was like, you know, just don't be afraid. It's not going to hurt you. So I know that from seeing that grainy stuff come out in the pot that it didn't all come out like it's supposed to. So some of it was, I guess, what you'd call more flavorful, and the other is more waxy. What it does, though, to your insides is it kind of makes everything slide a little easier. I had no problems going to the bathroom that night. I know this is oversharing. Bert would call this secret time. Secret time. It does loosen your bowels a little bit. And the next day, I woke up and I thought, hey, I wonder if they hardened even more. So the next day, I looked at them in the morning before I went to work, and sure enough, they'd hardened and they looked more appealing. They didn't look so much clear as they looked white. And I thought, okay, well, let me try this because they seem harder now, and it's probably a better treat now. And so I popped one in my mouth, and I had some coffee. And of course, lately I've been doing my coffee with extra MCT oil. And if you've ever seen the movie Dumb and Dumber, there's a scene where Lloyd is sitting on the toilet after he's taken some Turbolax, and literally his legs are rising off the ground as he's going to the bathroom. That's kind of what happened for the next 4 hours. Unfortunately, I was with a driver, and we were going from stop to stop, and almost every other stop I had to go to the bathroom. I know that's way oversharing. You guys don't care about that kind of stuff. But all I'm saying is, if you're going to do this kind of thing, be careful, be around the bathroom, be ready. I did not have that effect later because I had another one after we ate dinner, and then I had one this morning with my coffee. It didn't have the same effect. I think it was just that initial shock to my body of going, whoa, what are you doing adding all this extra fat? Now, being on this keto diet, they talk a lot about, you know, being fat heavy. cutting out the carbs, cutting out the sugar, and your body, your insulin system no longer goes after the glycogen because you don't have any. So it goes, what's the most available food source left? And it goes, oh look, there's a bunch of fat. So it starts eating fat. You're supposed to do intermittent fasting in the process, and I've been doing a little bit of that, but you know, you learn. You try things and you learn, and you pay attention to your body, and you pay attention to the way you feel, pay attention to the way you look. I can tell you that this morning I got on the scale and I was down to 234. When I started this journey on May 1st, I was 258. So the process is working. It is a journey. You're not going to expect rapid weight loss. It's going to be gradual. It also depends on your amount of energy in and energy out. So if you're not working out, it's going to be a little bit slower. If you are working out, it's going to be a bit faster. But you know, the main thing I say is get a support group, talk to people, encourage one another. Just say, hey, what are you doing? This works for me. I like this. I like that. You know, just recently somebody had told my wife that she didn't think that the Mios were keto friendly, and I don't know if they are or not. I actually haven't looked it up. But when I don't want to just drink water, I like this. It's got no sugar in the ingredients, but whatever substitute sugar is in it, I hope it's not like throwing me out of balance. And maybe that's why I've got a little bit of a headache. Maybe the ketos or the ketones are acting up. But anyway, enough about keto. I know you guys are like, yeah, Josh, we get it. You're on a diet. Trust me, I understand. I listen to people talk about their CrossFit, and I listen to people talk about being paleo, and I'm a vegan. I don't eat this and I don't eat that. Okay, well, whatever. I get it now. I'm sort of in your same boat. I have upgraded a couple things lately. I got a new tripod for my big camera. If you guys are watching on YouTube, I'm seriously considering no longer having a second YouTube channel. I kind of want to know what you think. I don't know if anybody's even watching my YouTube channel where I put this podcast on there. I created a separate YouTube channel called Stuff I Heard. And so far I've got very little viewership at all. And what I found is I'm cannibalizing my regular YouTube. I'm not putting as many videos on there because all my creativity is being poured into this. And I'm like, okay, where is the next step? What should I have been doing? Should I have been putting these on my regular YouTube? And would anybody watch it? I look at stuff like, you know, Bert Kreischer's got a podcast, and he puts all of his regular content on there as well as content from his podcast. He has a camera set up in the corner of the room. He's got a whole thing set up with microphones, and you know, he's able to just put it all on the same page, and that way it's easy to find. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need to be doing the same thing. And I think I may do that. I think I may do a transitionary video and say I'm no longer going to put stuff on the Stuff I Heard podcast YouTube page. Because what's the point? If nobody's watching it, what's the point? I mean, I got into all of this, just for the creative outlet, for the ability to communicate with you guys. And if I make it difficult, then who's going to watch it? Who really cares? I mean, honestly, I'm averaging numbers on this that are interesting enough that tells me people are interested. Of course, me even saying that right now, I realize that everybody's toning out. So let's talk about something interesting. Let's talk about Stuff I Heard, since this is the Stuff I Heard podcast. Recently, I have been listening to podcasts. I cut my grass today, and I listened to Joe Rogan interview Candace Thompson, episode 1143. She is a comedian, writer, actor. She's hilarious. She has a podcast called The Struggle, which is a great title because she talks about the struggle of being a single female, and the struggle of being a black female, and the struggle of being a comedian. And she's got a couple of cutaway jokes in here that, you know, she's like, you know, I do XYZ, and it's like, it's not normal for a comedian to do that. And she's like, oh, it's because my parents love me. And and it's kind of a funny segue. She's funny. She's funny to listen to. It's a fun interview. There's nothing serious going on. They talk about, you know, gender pronouns, and you know, Joe talks a little bit about how there's people out there that describe themselves as kins, like a fox or or a unicorn or a dragon, and he's like, okay, I get it. You're mentally unstable. Good for you. And I kind of feel the same way, in this day and age where there's a lot of people trying to identify as each other. I don't think there's enough struggle in people's lives where they realize how easy they have it, and they're inventing things to come up with just to say that they're special. I got news for everybody. If you ever watched the movie The Incredibles, there's a lot of discussion about, you want everybody to be on the same playing field, and if everybody was special, then no one is. It's sort of that. When people can't do things, they want to say, yeah, I can't lift that heavy weight, but I can pretend that I'm a wizard. And isn't that cool? Okay, well, it might be to some people. But if you're pretending to be a fox and you're like telling people that, I don't tell people that I identify as a fox because tell people you identify as being a human? I'm like, all right, come on. You're just being a lunatic now. And if you are one of those people, I'm sorry. You need to take a look in the mirror and really think about the decisions you made in your life. And maybe go to your dad and say, what have you done to me? Because somebody should have stopped you in your path and said, you're a lunatic. I did listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, episode 1144 with Doug Stanhope. That's a good 3-hour podcast with a very hilarious comedian, Doug Stanhope, who is a self-proclaimed alcoholic. He's a functioning alcoholic comedian guy who lives in Bisbee and has been buying up houses all over his community so that his friends, whenever they came to town, had a place to stay. He's a stand-up comedian, a writer, TV host, and he has his own podcast called the Doug Stanhope Podcast. He's written a couple of books. Let's see. What's their most recent one? His recent book is This Is Not Fame. A From What I Remember book is available on Amazon. Doug is a fun interview. One of my favorite podcasts ever is listening to him on the Bert cast when he went to go visit Bert, and they did a 6-hour podcast. They literally did like 3+ hours, and then LeeAnn was like, hey, we're having dinner. And normally that was the sign of, all right, we need to wrap this up. And Doug was like, I want to stay for dinner. He's like, really? And so he stayed for dinner and ended up playing games with Bert's daughters. And apparently it was so much fun, and they hung out and they drank, and they came back in the studio, in the man cave, and hit record again and did another 3+ hours. It was great. It was fun to listen to. As a Bert fan, I enjoyed every second of it. And anytime I get to hear Doug do anybody's podcast, like Joe's or Bert's, I look forward to it. I don't currently subscribe to his podcast just because I don't have enough time. There's not enough time to do everything you want. I got shows on Netflix right now I can't even get to because I'm just like, I'm invested in this other stuff. Since I'm on that, well, hang on, let's talk about podcasts. Okay, so I listened to those two. I also listened to Wife of the Party by LeeAnn Kresicher. I'm looking on my phone right now if you guys are watching on the video. I'm trying to look up titles. I listened to her episode 23, Georgia and Lexi. Georgia is her 14-year-old daughter, and Lexi is her cousin. They were talking about the differences that they had growing up in LA versus rural Georgia, and what it's like at the different schools, being of different sizes. That's pretty interesting. I am a LeeAnn Kresicher fan because of Bert, but also she's interesting all in herself, and she's sort of turned me on to this whole podcasting thing. She's the one that told me how to do this at all. On the intro to Bert's podcast, she says, hey, go on Anchor and just follow the steps. You can download the podcast, you can download the icon, the app, and just go from there. And she was right. That's all I've done since the beginning. This is episode 21, and I've just been figuring out with that first step. So, LeeAnn, I know you're probably not listening, but thank you for giving me this outlet and mentioning it and bringing it up. Because, I would still be searching. I'd still be looking, going, all right, how do I get this thing to go? Part of my discussion with guys this past week has been they want to start a podcast, and they're like, yeah, but how did you do it? And I'm literally talking them through the steps that I've learned. I like to teach and I like to share information, and I don't mind helping them figure it out. And I told a couple of my friends, because there's two friends that have really good ideas, and one of them is a niche market, and one of them is really interesting. I think is going to be huge. Both of them I'm going to talk about whenever they get their podcast up and going, and I just want to build a community. You know, I made a comment, my brother and I have been talking about this, and I said, you know, the way you change the world is you build it through community. And you know, if you're watching the video thing right now, I'm wearing my new Spring Church shirt. It says, I heart my church. And the C is underlined because the C is supposed to stand for Christ. And, you know, we talk about the fact in church of how the church is not necessarily a building. The building is just a tool. The church is the people. We are the church. And, you know, Joey Diaz has a podcast called The Church of What's Happening Now. And, you know, it is a collection of people. It's a collection of ideas, and it's a collection of like-minded people going towards a common goal. And in a way, this is a church. Just being able to share information with you guys and being able to communicate and, you know, bounce ideas off of you. I know some of you guys are listening to this while you're working, and just like me. I mean, I used to ride down the road listening to podcasts, and, you know, if I could get into a rhythm where I could hear them just nonstop, it made my day so much more pleasurable. It made my whole routine more interesting. It was better than listening to the radio. It definitely engaged me. It made me laugh. And, you know, if you're out there and you're thinking, God, I want to start a podcast. Hey, I've made videos on YouTube. Look it up. There's videos out there. There's podcasts where I talk about it. You can do it. There's nothing to stop you. But back to LeeAnn Kresicher. I'm listening right now to her 25th podcast, which is about diabetes. She sits down with two moms who have kids who are dealing with type 1 diabetes. Now, the only thing I know about diabetes before I listen to this is that was one of those diseases that you got if you ate a lot of sugar. If you ate too much sugar, your body would kick into diabetes. Or if you ate too much fried food. Apparently, black folks are more adept to getting diabetes from eating a bunch of fried foods. I had that discussion this past week with a fellow driver. He was telling me about it. He said, we always have to watch out for diabetes because it affects us more. And I was like, really? I had no idea. He goes, well, a lot of it is our food choices. And I had no idea. Type 1 diabetes, though, come to find out, hearing her talk about it, is just a disease where your pancreas goes, I don't know how to process insulin anymore. And it just suddenly starts failing, and you have to start regulating it on a regular basis. And a lot of times you have to introduce extra sugars into your diet in order to just function. And I had no idea that was even a thing. I didn't know what that was. So I'm learning as I'm listening to this. I'm about halfway through with the podcast. I kind of took a break so that I could do this. What else have I listened to? Oh, I also listened to Bert's podcast that he just put out. It is episode 298. It came out Tuesday. It's the Grundo Comedy Festival. It's a live podcast that he does at a festival. This was recorded quite a while ago, but he just has put it out, mainly because, you know, when you're of his status, like you have people on that want to promote things like their special or a movie or something like that. So you have to kind of coordinate when you're going to air it so that it gets heard by the most people for the most bang for your buck, I guess you'd say. This one doesn't really promote anybody doing anything right then. This is during a comedy festival. On here, he sits down with comedians Dave Williamson and Ryan Dalton at the live Grundo Comedy Festival. And I'm not sure where Grundo Comedy Festival is. They talk about it on the podcast, but honestly, I can't remember. But Bert has a Netflix special coming out. This is going to be my commercial for Bert. Bert has a Netflix special coming out August 24th. It's called Secret Time. Mainly because in his comedy, he has a tendency on stage to be in the middle of a stream of consciousness type thing where he's telling you a joke, and then all of a sudden, like, the ADD kid catches in, and he'll go, oh, by the way, so-and-so, and he goes, oh, wait, you want to know something? Secret time. And then he'll tell you a secret about something in his life, and you don't know if it's like okay for you to hear what he's saying. I mean, honestly, he's a little too forthcoming with things, but it's often hilarious. Sometimes a little disturbing. There's a few things I've heard where I thought, really, Bert, dude, really? You kind of worry about Bert a little bit. He's sort of the funny broken toy that you want to help, but at the same time you don't want him to get off the path, because then he wouldn't be the same guy. Sort of like when my youngest boy, they thought he had ADHD and they wanted to give him drugs, and the school was all pissed off that oh, you need to go get him on medicine right away because we just can't handle him. And I was like, okay, was that a you problem or was that a him problem? And they made me go to a pediatric neurologist where they did testing on him, and they realized, oh no, he doesn't have attention deficit disorder. He has boredom issues. Like, his brain just works on a faster cycle than everybody else. And they were like, the kid's actually extremely smart, and he's probably just bored in class. But they wanted me to drug him, and I was like absolutely against it. I had even made the decision before I went there that I said, if they do say that he has this, I'm still not going to want to drug him, because if I do, it's going to take away the creative part that is my son. My son Jacob was very creative. I mean, he could read at an early age. He could write at an early age. He had a very imaginative, creative mind. He could come up with stories that were just amazing. And I thought, if I dumb you down or I nerf your mental ability, that means all of this goes away. And I didn't want that to happen. The last thing I wanted to do is take away his potential. If anything, you want to lift that kind of stuff up, So I was like, if they have to deal with a kid who's just bored, okay, get over it. Or if they have to deal with a kid who's not engaged enough, then you guys need to do a better job of engaging them. And, I still feel that way. Jacob, if you're listening to this podcast, still waiting for that email, buddy, or that phone call. My youngest boy is on a journey right now of figuring out what he's supposed to do next in life. He has a degree in welding, but is somehow doing nothing, and I'm still coping with how to help him get out of that. He's not living here. He's living with his grandmother on his mom's side, but yeah, I'm praying for him. But anyway, I do want to talk about a couple things on Netflix. Now, I know I've just mentioned Bert's special coming out on the 24th of August. I want to talk about this show I just watched. It's called Kiss Me First. It's something new that popped up on Netflix. In the previews, it looks a lot like Ready Player One, which I went and saw at the theater and absolutely loved. I went because one of my best friends, Greg, had mentioned the book, and he's like, I can't wait till this movie comes out. And I was like, really? The only thing I'd heard about Ready Player One was that it was a very popular science fiction book that when it got optioned to be made into a movie, apparently there was a bidding war for the rights to make it a movie, and Steven Spielberg spent a ton of money to get it. I went to the movies and watched it. I knew nothing of the book, but I totally enjoyed the movie. I thought it was fun. I thought it was entertaining. I thought it was well done. I watched it and thought, I could watch this a few more times. This is really good. My buddy Greg went and saw it, and he goes, well, it wasn't like the book, but I did enjoy it. This is one of those things where, if you love to read, then you get to engage your own imagination as they tell you about things, and you can kind of hypothesize what people look like and what they're supposed to do and all this other stuff. And then when it gets made into a movie, they have to make it, for certain reasons, look a certain way or go a certain direction, and it may have to do with budget, it may have to do with limitations on what they can do visually. But this was good. I enjoyed it. And when I saw the previews for this Kiss Me First, I thought, wow, this looks a lot like that. It just shows a girl who's like, she has like what it looks like in the previews is, it looks like she has like a boring, regular life, but when she goes into this virtual world with her VR goggles and her stuff on her hands and whatnot, she's experiencing a different world where she's, kind of a badass. And I thought, oh, this looks like fun. So I went to watch it, and it's a foreign done show, I think it's done in England. Everyone has accents, so I'm not exactly sure where it was filmed. But it's entertaining. It sort of has a creepy serial killer element to it. So it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little more lighthearted. But there's drug use, there's nudity, there's violence, there's a psychopath involved. And there's a little bit of Black Mirror type mentality in it, in that it sort of looks at technology and how it can invade your life in a way and make life a little more dangerous, which is interesting. I enjoyed watching the show. They did a good job of wrapping up the end and leaving it open for the next iteration of this for another season. I don't know if it's going to do great on there or not, but if it does, I think they have a good cast and a good writing team. And visually, it's beautiful. I mean, visually, there are parts in this that are in the VR world game that just look great. I mean, they did a great job of that. So, kudos to Netflix for stepping up their game and making some really cool content. I really enjoyed that. My wife and I are currently watching Sons of Anarchy because we missed it when it was on regular TV, and we're on like season 5, about episode 8, and there's 7 seasons on there. So it's slow going. We only get to watch an episode or 2 once in a while, and it's pretty violent. I mean, it was done for FX back in the day, but season 5 is pretty violent so far. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody who's not into some brutal killings. It's weird how media gets you so used to brutal killings, but in a weird way shies away from anything having to do with intimacy between people. Even as young kids, like we're taught that it's okay to watch, violence on TV, and yet if 2 people are being intimate in any way, or if you see someone half naked or something, it's like, oh my God, look, oh, it's an interesting thing that we allow to be okay, when naturally we are naked. I mean, we put clothes on all the time. We know what the human form looks like, and yet we're not okay with seeing it. But we are okay with seeing these awful, violent murders and decapitations and all this other stuff. It's kind of weird. But anywho, listen, kids, what I'm trying to say is, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Somebody asked me recently, they said, what do you talk about when you do your podcast? And I said, honestly, most of the time I hit record and I go, all right, here we go. This is all stream of consciousness. Like, I have no notes. There's nothing on my desk. There's nothing to say, this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm looking up stuff on my phone. I've got people calling me and texting me, and I'm like, yeah, in a second, chill out. But this is how I get started. This is how this gets started. If you're listening to this, like I said, this is episode 21, and I have no plan. I have no plan. If you have a plan, if you're a planner, kudos to you, man. I applaud that kind of stuff, man. I got one friend of mine that's planning to the point that he's probably never going to start his podcast. Josh West, if you're listening, I'm talking to you, buddy. He's planning so much about what he's going to talk about, how he's going to do it, and all this other stuff. He's probably not going to do it just because he likes to plan till nothing happens. And, whatever. If this is the public outcry that I get, my camera just stopped. It's weird. I need to get a camera system set up to where it won't stop. Both Canon cameras will record up to about 25 minutes and then they shut off. I don't know why. It has nothing to do with, well, my little camera, this G7X Mark II, it has to do with the size of the battery. I don't use the camera every day, and batteries are one of those things where if you don't use them, they become dormant. They don't charge like they're supposed to. This big camera's got a much bigger battery, the Canon EOS Rebel T7i. It has a much bigger battery so it can record longer, but there's some kind of limitation on it where it won't let it record more than 25 minutes. Again, I'm not exactly sure why. But anyway, I'm looking forward to Orange is the New Black comes out this week. I think it comes out Friday, the 27th. I'm looking forward to that. I enjoy Orange is the New Black. That's actually one of the first shows that I watched when I got access to Netflix. I watched it at my dad's. I got into it. I was like, holy cow, I don't have Netflix, but this is a great show. And when I came back to Florence, I mentioned it to my sister, and my sister was like, hey, I got a password you could use, and you can watch it on there. And that was the first show that I got into. So looking forward to the new season of Orange is the New Black. Looks like the girls are going to maximum penitentiary. If you've watched it up to here, spoiler alert, they had a riot at their last prison, and they are no longer there. So it's going to be interesting to see what the characters go through now. I'm looking forward to that. I've got to find time to watch the new Luke Cage. Season 2 has been out, and I have still not gotten to start it. If you guys have watched Luke Cage, you'll know how much I'm anticipating it, and also I'm kicking myself in the butt for not watching it yet. I got to get to it. There's not enough time. Literally today, okay, I went to bed last night thinking about all the stuff I had to do today, and I had the day off, thank God. But I knew that today I had to cut the grass. I needed to go to the grocery store. I needed to possibly go to the farmer's market, although my wife ended up doing that. I had to get stuff for dinner tonight. We're having salads. But I wanted to get a couple other things, like I changed out the toilet in the half bath, not the toilet, but the toilet seat. It's an older toilet seat, and I got one of those that like self-closes real soft so it doesn't slam. But I want to get the wooden one, and I wanted to get the one that you know doesn't wiggle. You got to spend some money on something like that. So I went to Walmart, found one for $30, came home and put it on. I also changed out a light bulb in the kitchen. I changed out the air filter in the AC unit, and I fixed my desk drawer. I put this desk together that I'm recording all this on. I put this together the first year we were in the house. We've been in our house now almost 11 years, and for the last 11 years, the top drawer on the left has been opening up about 2.5 inches. It wouldn't close. Every time you close it, it like rolls back out. There's a catch system on the inside that's supposed to catch, and it would never catch. And I had taken it apart, and I had investigated, and I couldn't figure out how to make it stay closed. And my wife kind of joked around about, yeah, that's what happens when you let your husband put stuff together. It doesn't always work out. And I'm like, yeah, thanks, baby. Appreciate the confidence there. And I could have fixed it before, but I didn't know how. I just couldn't fathom what I could do. I had thought about putting like Velcro on it or a latch system of some kind, and I don't know. Today I was walking around Walmart and I looked, and I just ended up in the area where all the tools and the little pieces parts are, and I got on the aisle with the random screws and bolts and whatnot, and there was a little thing, a little magnetic catch, and it looked like it had a metal plate and a magnetic catch, and the whole thing was like 97 cents. And I was like, okay, I could do that. So I came home, I took the desk apart, and I was able to put it on here, and now the drawer closes shut. And when you open it, it opens. And when you close it, the magnet holds it, and it works great. I fixed it. So, like, I've done all this stuff. Oh, and I also made a spoiler alert, if any of the my wife's girlfriends are listening to this, I made a loaded bacon cheddar cauliflower casserole that she's going to bring over to somebody's house Friday night, because y'all are getting together for some dinner and some drinks and girl time. So I made that today so that you guys would have that then. So yeah, I've been a busy bee. And I went to bed last night kind of frantic over, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this. And I haven't recorded a podcast, and I got to record a podcast. On top of that, I worked 15 hours yesterday. So, yeah. Sometimes life is frantic, and you just have to figure out what you're going to do. And you have to prioritize, and you have to say, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And sometimes you get it done, sometimes you don't. Today I got it all done. Yay! I'm going to wrap this up. I took a picture online so that I could talk about this, This podcast is now on iOS, Spotify, Anchor, iTunes, Android, Overcast, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Pocket Casts, and Other. I don't know what Other is, but apparently people are listening on Other as well. I got 186 listens on Other. Weird. Whatever it is you guys are listening to me on, that's great. That's awesome. I've had several people tell me they were listening to me on Spotify. I was like, really? I don't even have Spotify on my phone. I don't honestly know what it is. But anywho, I want to say that I appreciate every one of you guys. Thanks for listening. If you guys want to be a part of this, you can engage. If you have the Anchor app on your phone, you can actually send me a message. There's a way on here where you can hit the record button and record me a message and send it to me. I've done that with my brother and with a friend of mine, Byron. Byron, if you're listening to this, buddy, that was cool, man. Sending messages back and forth on this. That was pretty neat. I might figure out a way to use some of that in the future. If you want to send me like a sound bite of ideas, I can input your sound bite in here and then talk on it. Hey, this is all the beginning of a community, right? So, thanks for joining along. Appreciate every one of you. Yeah, let's change the world. Let's build a community. Y'all take care now. Bye. And that's it for the audio. I'm gonna post that. And thanks for watching. This is all recorded, by the way. The video part is recorded on the new Canon camera with the new tripod. The new tripod is the GorillaPod Joby GorillaPod 3K. It's sturdy. I like it. So anyway, y'all take care now. Bye.